Gossamer Ch.4. This gathering, this dwelling, place where they slept now, heaped together, was only one, a relatively small one of many. It was a small subcolony of dream givers. Every human population has countless such colonies, invisible always, of these well-organized, attentive, and hard-working creatures who move silently through the nights at their task. Their task is both simple and at the same time immensely difficult. Through touching, they gather material, memories, colors, words once spoken, hints of sense, and the tiniest fragments of forgotten sound. They collect pieces of the past, of long ago, and of yesterday. They combine these things carefully, creating dreams. Then they insert the dreams as the humans and sometimes animals, for occasionally they give dreams to pets as well. Sleep. The act of dream insertion is called bestowal. It is very delicate. It requires absolute precision to bestow a dream, or even to decide exactly when one should be bestowed. Littlest, the one who was only learning, had not yet studied bestowal. She was beginning the way they all had, with the touching, the gathering of material. And she was learning, too, to dissolve. Concentrate, Fastidious had told her. Stay very still, focusing on your own form. Littlest stayed motionless and tried to concentrate on her small wisp of a self. I wish I had wings, she thought. Everything would be easier if we had wings. I could swoop and glide, and I would never tumble on the staircase because I would simply, you are not concentrating. Fastidious' voice was exasperated. Sorry, Littlest said apologetically, opening her eyes. I was just thinking. That's the point. You are not supposed to think. Focus on your form and will it to break down and dissolve. Dutifully, Littlest tried again, carefully not thinking, not paying attention at all to the thoughts that tried to swim into her mind, the questions about dogs or wings, or all the many things she wondered about. And when she did that, focusing only on her own small form, she felt it begin to happen for the first time. She felt the pieces of her, the very tiniest pieces. She did not know if they even had a name. Begin to separate. I'm doing it, she called out gleefully. It's working. Then, of course, it ended. Littlest opened her eyes, knowing she had done it, at least a little bit, and hoping for praise from Fastidious. But Fastidious had disappeared. Where are you? Littlest called in alarm. Then she realized, oh my goodness, you've dissolved. In front of her, particle by particle, Fastidious reappeared. She had a very annoyed look. Two things, Fastidious said. One, do not ever call out when you are mid-dissolving. See what happened? The instant you cried, I'm doing it. I stopped doing it, Littlest acknowledged, abashed. Two, never, never, never call attention to the fact that someone else has dissolved. This was only a training session, of course, but if we had been out there, Fastidious gestured toward the larger world, the human world. Well, the reason for dissolving is to become what? Invisible, Littlest whispered. And we need to be invisible. Why? So that humans won't see us or know about us. And if I am dissolved out there in the human world and suddenly someone screams, she glared at Littlest and imitated her voice with a shrill sarcasm. Oh my goodness, you've dissolved. I'm sorry, Littlest said. Fastidious sighed. She was tired and had a touch of headache. She didn't like children and was impatient with inexperience. Perhaps it was a good thing that now thin elderly would take over the training of littlest one. You're going to notice that we change perspective again back to the woman and what's going on in her life, not fastidious one and littlest one. Now morning came. The woman rose slowly. She was wide awake. She always woke early, but her joints were stiffened by sleep, and she sat at the edge of the bed for a while, moving her ankles and knees, telling them to wake up and get going. She had a sense of humor about herself. You make me feel like the Tin Woodsman in The Wizard of Oz, she said to her left knee, rusted and immobilized. I wish I could oil you. This is an example of an allusion. You could also think it shows a little simile, but an allusion is a reference to another text, book, movie, or event. So it's referencing the Wizard of Oz. She's comparing herself to the Tin Woodsman to kind of show how old and achy her knees and bones are. She stood after a moment and stretched. Her nightgown was flowered flannel. The small bouquets of sweet peas on it faded from repeated washings. She slipped her bare feet into worn blue slippers. Good morning, Toby, she said, looking down at the dog, who yawned and thumped his tail. What about some breakfast? Slowly, Toby roused and stretched his nose to the floor while his rump rose. He watched while she put on a robe and tied the belt. Then he followed her into the hall, down the stairs through the front parlor into the kitchen, and stood patiently beside the cupboard where his food was stored. He watched while she filled a kettle with water and set it on the gas burner. He watched while she found a tea bag in the canister, took a thick brown mug from a cupboard, and dangled the tea bag in it. He watched while she dropped a slice of bread into the toaster and turned the toaster on. Finally, she filled his bowl and set it on the floor beside the stove. Then, when the kettle whistled, she poured the steaming water into the mug. Another day, the woman said, as she took her plate of buttered toast and her cup of tea to the table. She unfolded a flowered cloth napkin and placed it in her lap after she sat down. Toby finished now with his gulped breakfast, curled by her feet in a spot where sun, finding its way through the small paned window of the old house, had outlined a square on the floor. We'll take a walk after I get dressed, she told him. How about that? It looks like a lovely morning. Toby drummed the floor with his tail. They took a walk every morning, unless the weather made it impossible. They always walked to the corner, turned left, walked past the Methodist church, many squirrels there on that large lawn, but Toby no longer bothered about them. Past the house of the young couple with the new baby, and across the street to the small park with a diagonal path, where sometimes they stopped beside a fountain. Resting on the park bench, the woman would listen to the birds and watch young parents push small children on the nearby swings as Toby sat attentively at her feet. Then they would continue around the corner, and then the next, making a complete square and returning home. It was a short walk, but all that she could manage. He dozed while she ate. She continued to talk to him, though she knew he was asleep. She had no one else to talk to, no one but Toby. She had outlived many of her friends, as well as several earlier dogs. Life had become very lonely for the woman, but she was accustomed to her solitude. She sipped her tea, sighed, and fingered a folded letter and its envelope that lay on the table. With a worried look, she thought about the way her existence was about to change. It's a little foreshadowing right there. We can tell that something's about to happen. It has her worried. There's about to be a change in her life. what would be a major change that would be inside that envelope that might change her way of living?